Good morning, afternoon, or evening, wherever you may be tuning in from. Welcome to the Truck Around and Find Out podcast, where we discuss some fun and hot topics surrounding trucking, safety, community, and kind of our lives here in northern Colorado. I'm one of your hosts, Keith Couch, with Rush Truck Center out of Greeley, Colorado. I also have Rocky Mountain Peterbilts on YouTube, and we also have Ryan Byers here, owner of Front Range Compliance and DOT University.
How you doing, Keith?
Good. How are you?
Welcome, everybody. Thanks for joining us. So
you just got back from vacation.
I did, yeah. If you want to call it that, it was felt a lot like work. I came home. You come from vacation, you think, oh, I need to get some rest, and that's kind of how I most definitely felt this particular time. So yeah, Holly and I just went to Vermont, New Hampshire on this thing that I guess she coined the term leaf peeping. Apparently, on TikTok, she found some girl that documents and vlogs on all of her trips, and Holly wanted to take this dream vacation and go leaf peeping. I personally felt like it sounded like we were doing something dirty, to be honest with you, But yeah, so we went north of Boston and we checked out, Vermont and New Hampshire and some of Maine, and yeah, it was definitely interesting.
So you had to go all the way back you're in Colorado.
Yeah. And I'd never been up there before. So, there's supposed to be different leaves.
We got lots of leaves here.
And what I did discover is they have a lot of aspen trees also out there. So very similar to the same type of leaves we see here.
Yeah.
So we got out there, we went and checked it out and we flew into Boston and then we drove up and we did the drive. Pretty much everywhere we went, everybody was apologetic because apparently they're in a drought and the leaf season came about 3 weeks early. So we got there and saw a bunch of dead trees. So it was great. It was great.
So they're all brown and dry there?
Very, very brown. No, it was lush and green. Like when they say they're in a drought, they don't understand the type of droughts we see here.
We live in the high desert here. So.
Yeah, it's a little crispy in late July and August, and that kind of thing. But, everything was lush and green. Overall, it was beautiful. And yes, we did find some leaves. The further west we went, we found some. And then up in Maine, we also found some also. But I got to be honest with you, 2 days is enough when it comes to that. So we did, we came back down into Boston. And I wanted to check out Salem. I'm the history guy. So I convinced Holly I wanted to take her down to Salem, and we made the drive.
Salem, Massachusetts?
Salem, Massachusetts, yes.
Okay.
And, the home of the old witch trials.
Oh, yeah.
And, my wife is a fraidy cat. She's scared of everything. And I just thought we were going for the history. We made the trek down there, and that was tough because it was tight corners and tight. I mean, their houses basically come clear down to the street, little bitty sidewalks, I guess, maybe. But we get all the way down there, and we get into the historical district, and I'm driving through there, and Holly looks around, and she goes, "Is this all witch stuff?" And I said, "Yes, it is." And I explained real briefly about the history of everything down there, and she just says, keep driving. I'm not getting out of the effing car.
I probably wouldn't either.
Yeah. And, we found out right then and there that, of course, October is Salem's tourist season. So when we got down there, everybody in the world was down there. We're talking full costumes. It was
like
nuts.
all period correct stuff?
No, it was just witches and witchcraft and big time of the year for them because of Halloween, right? So we I got to drive by and be like, oh, yep, that looks like a cool historical building and that. I mean, they had guys with speakers that were standing on a podium and talking to people all around them, kind of like street performer things. And I was like, it probably would have been pretty interesting to go check it all out. But yeah, Holly wasn't having nothing to do with it.
So you flew into Boston. How far did you drive?
Oh, well over 1,000 miles.
How many days were you there?
We were there for a full week. We went for the full 7 days vacation, about the same amount of time that I'd book a resort stay on a beach somewhere that's nice and cool.
Okay.
And they'd bring me Mai Tais or, any of that stuff. But
So you like Salem. It was interesting, I'm sure.
It was. It would have been even better if we could have actually figured the history out. But Holly wasn't having it. So respect to my lovely wife, I drove away.
We talked a little bit about this before, but you might as well bring it up here. you had a couple of your favorite experiences. What were those?
Well, we did. We did. So, a couple real cool things. When we got up into the heart of the country, we did the train, the Conway Scenic Train. That was interesting, but like I said, the leaves are falling off the trees already. And we bought that upscale car that had the glass dome, and it's supposed to be great for pictures. Well, that's only if they take time to actually clean the windows. So all my pictures, I can see dirt and cobwebs and that kind of thing. So that didn't turn out so well. But hey, it was a 4-hour train ride, so interesting. Went to Woodstock, Vermont. Really a pretty little town. If I was ever going back there, that'd be a town that I'd love to revisit.
Is that where they had the famous Woodstock?
It's not. No,
That's
it's not. I asked that same question too.
That's New York, right?
Yeah, for sure. So I guess there's a few different. I know there was a Woodstock, New Hampshire, Woodstock in New York, and then also in Vermont. So I just thought there'd be one. So I was like, "Is this where the concert was?" And everybody looked at me like I was uneducated, and clearly I was. And we went to a little maple farm, and that was beautiful. It was in the country, loved that. But as I was leaving, that's when I found the true hidden gem. And I went around the corner, and I found the Whistle Pig Distillery and Tasting Room, and that I literally could not pull off fast enough to get parked and be like, we're going that way. So went in there and checked out some of the Whistle Pig rye whiskeys, and that was real fun.
Good.
And right next to it, they had a glass blowing shop, and some real upscale glass. When you come into it, it was called the Simon Pierce Glass, but when you come into it, first into the store, they have a really neat display. It's got all like the White House presidential glasses that they make for the White House with the insignias on it and that was really cool to kind of come across that. And then I guess I got to give a shout out to this little bed and breakfast that we found in Poland, Maine, and it was called Wolf Cove Inn. Neither one of us, we were talking about it afterwards, and neither one of us had any idea how we even found this place, and we booked it there. Just probably popped up, and we went for it because we were looking for something small. And I've never stayed at a little inn with only several rooms and that kind of thing. But this place, they have done it right. The owners, Jeff and oh gosh, I just lost my train of thought. Nicole and Jeff, they did a really good job fixing it up, building the place up. It was decorated great. So, of course, Holly loved it because it's all about fall. They have their own chef. They've got a little bar in there. So we had a Michelin star chef cooking for us.
Wow.
And it was just phenomenal. It was a very unique experience. And if I ever did go back up to that area, I got to say I would make that. Like, this is where we're staying. I don't want to go to a hotel. I don't want to go back to this little inn. And their price, the hotels like the Hampton Inn was $600 a night, and this place was only $300 a night. So I'm telling you, it's a little hidden gem. It was absolutely spectacular. So I would very much recommend that.
Well, that's good. So if you're ever in Poland, Maine,
go to
the Wolf Cove Inn.
Yeah, definitely check out the Wolf Cove Inn. Like I said, not sure how we found it, but it was most definitely.
How far is that from Whistle Pig?
Oh, man, now you're making me think. Okay, it all kinds of blends together after a while. It's just a sea of leaves that are laying on the ground. I was hoping I could at least find a leaf pile to run through. It was a couple hours because we were in Vermont, and then we came across New Hampshire and that. So it was a couple hour drive from where we were at over.
Well, I know back east things are a lot closer together than they are out here.
They definitely are. They definitely are. The states are very small, so you can you could drive for a few hours and probably drive into 3 or 4 different states up in there. And in fact, that last day, I kind of got the idea of like, hey, we want to go down and check out Rhode Island, New Jersey, and do that quick little tour. It looks like we could do that in 3 hours. And I looked at the traffic and be like, yeah, no, we'll still be at that tomorrow, given the traffic situation. So that'd be another trip if you can ever get me back out that way.
I think before you took off, I think the last place we talked was at the Flood and Peterson.
It was
Safety Symposium out here at the Embassy Suites in Loveland. How did that go for you?
We went to the Flood and Pete Symposium. We had a table there, and I was one of their speakers. And it was a really good symposium this year. I think overall they had some good presentations. And we had the benefit. We got to sit in, and I got to catch up with Trooper David Hackenberger again. And he gave a little presentation on some of the topics. And one of them is really relevant to today's topic. And I think that's really what I was hoping that we could focus on today for our truck around and find out, and that was going to be the regulatory requirements for the English language proficiency testing and their enforcement policies. So he got up and kind of talked about what their expectations are and what they're looking to do, and how they're going to be running their enforcement.
So to be clear, this is you pull into a scale or get pulled over. They have a test. What does that involve?
Well, let me go back just a little ways and provide just a little bit of history on this, because if we go back in the time back in my state patrol days, it was around 2005 when they first brought out the English speaking driver in the North American Standard Out of Service criteria. So in the regulation in 391.11, they've had it in there for even longer, that one of the points to be qualified is the driver needs to be able to speak English proficiently, or I think it says sufficiently, to communicate and understand official signs and make official remarks and inquiries. And so they went through, they put it into the North American Standard Out of Service criteria, and then they started taking enforcement on that in 2008, and then in 2016 or 2015. They pulled it out of the out of service criteria, and it has been out of there ever since. And given the events of everything that have been happening nationwide, and that, it's become a very, very hot topic.
Well, I think it came to the surface a few years ago when we had that guy come out of Eisenhower Tunnel and came down into Denver, and what did he kill 4 people?
Yeah, we had 4 people, and I couldn't even tell you how many people were injured.
Yeah,
in
if
that
you ever
one.
watch the videos of that, it's absolutely
you've got the
terrifying.
The streamers, the one guy eating his burger you see the truck go past him on the shoulder at 85 miles per hour, and
I know exactly where that's at, and it's absolutely terrifying.
It is. Yeah, that whole event was just mind blowing. The driver coming down through that pass. You get the video of him before he gets to Morrison Corner, and just before he gets to it, that truck is up on that trailer's over on 2 wheels, and it comes back down, and then the video shuts off before actual Morrison Corner. And I really wanted to see him make that actual corner, but that part didn't get caught on camera. And then when he came up over the edge, he approached that traffic, or up over the hill, and as he's dropping down from right there at Morrison, where the road is, the Morrison Road, and then he came, there's kind of like a sea of asphalt. Just there's plenty of lanes, there's plenty of cable rails, and this guy skipped a truck ramp with no brakes, and
several.
Yeah, and then he went past all that cable rail. He went past plenty of areas he could have laid the truck on its side, embankments he could have taken it into, and as he was approaching the traffic, he decided at 85 mile an hour to hit that shoulder. And I think anybody with some common sense is going to say that was not the right decision. But that's we could probably spend the whole day talking about that event. I train and I use that in my defensive driving a lot, just to really. People have to think about that.
Yeah, and I don't know if we can find that video and put it in our notes.
Yeah, we definitely could.
So a link to it, so that if anybody's listening to this, they can click on that and go watch it, because it is absolutely terrifying.
It absolutely was. That entire crash was really sad day and that type of thing. So I think that started to bring it up in discussion. Nobody was really handling anything, I think, because of the politics and that type of thing between 2019 and now. We've had just, I think, if you really look at it, there's probably been just crash after crash after crash. And then we had that big one that happened, here a while back. And I know we're going to talk about it a little bit later, that really kind of brought this to the forefront. That let the administration step up and they put the executive order back out and said, enough. If you cannot read and write and understand highway signs, you can't drive. So an executive order came out, and the FMCSA, then released this other document that we have here that we're going to talk a little bit about, and that's going to be, it was the English Language Proficiency that was released on May 20th of 2025. But I think the biggest point of this is when Trooper Hackenberg was talking about, how they're going to be taking enforcement on this and what they're going to be doing was, he just kind of let everybody know that, what their options are and how they're going to be doing the questions, the interview, and that type of thing. And I think it was really good to hear what the enforcement divisions and how they're going to how to go through and handle these situations. So I think overall that's going to be super helpful. I think the one really big thing that we just have to really note is that when we talk about this is, first off, the Colorado State Patrol, they adopt the federal regulation, and I may be a little bit biased toward them since that's my agency that I worked for before I left and started this business, but they try to really adhere to the same federal standards that the feds are putting out, as all states should. So, but we do kind of run into a little problem here and there. So I just kind of want to remind everybody, remember, wherever you're traveling to and that type of thing, remember, always check with your local enforcement to find out what their requirements are, how they're going to address some things like that. And if you do have questions, you just need some help, you're welcome to reach out to us at Front Range Compliance. My team and I would be always happy to hit you up. And you can go to frontrangecompliance.com to get our contact information. We'd love to help you with that. But when it comes to the Spanish speaking driver and trying to set politics aside and just say, hey, we're looking at this 100% from safety. My philosophy about this is, just approaching it with safety in mind. The people that we work with, they're going to hire who they're going to hire. When we process driver qualifications, when we recommend who they hire, who they don't hire, they don't listen to me. They need the driver, so they're going to put people to work. So, being a little bit of a realist, I understand that we're going to have individuals driving that maybe English is their second language and they're not as proficient as they need to be. The only problem is when you go to a lot of those offices, everybody is speaking whatever language is used around there. Well, it could be Spanish, it could be German, it could be Russian. I've seen it all, but looking at this from a safety aspect, I think it's most important that they're putting the body in the truck. The feds can deal with that side of it. The biggest part is going to be, making sure that people are safe. And I encourage all of our clients to encourage English in the workplace. Spanish at home, Russian at home, German at home. But when you're at the workplace, let's work on our English and see if we can help people become a little bit more comfortable with it. And that's going to help them make it through the questions that people like Trooper
Sure.
Hackenberg are going to be asking them.
So if a driver is placed out of service because they can't, how do they get back in so where they can get back into a truck and earn a living?
They're going to have to become proficient in English. So it's a disqualification out of service. So as that happens, they are going to be put out of service. They're on the side of the road. The company will have to arrange for another driver to come and to take over that load, because that driver has now been disqualified by the FMCSA or by the roadside enforcement official. And in order for them to get qualified again in interstate commerce, they're going to have to meet the proficiency standards.
Do they go to the state patrol to retest?
No, there's really not going to be any retest or anything like that. So, as typical when it comes to a roadside inspection, we have an out of service violation. The agency or the company has to send that enforcement report signed saying that they've made all the repairs and corrective actions necessary,
okay.
And they still have to send that back within 15 days to the enforcement agency that completed the inspection. But the process is going to be that if that driver drives again and gets pulled over, then these next steps that we're going to talk about, they should be able to pass those. And so that's going to be the tough part. And
what are those steps?
Well, so Hackenberger, Trooper Hackenberger went through and kind of gave us the rundown of the process. And this is going to be directly from the State Patrol. And I took these points that we're going to talk about, I took it directly out of their topics. And I also found these same points in this memorandum from the FMCSA. So we'll kind of talk about some of the differences there. But it kind of went through step 1 through step 2, and then it's talked about their process. So it's a 2-step process. First off, it's going to start off with a driver interview. And the enforcement officer, when they pull your drivers over, they're going to come up and they're going to conduct an interview. It's going to be in English, and that's going to be just general questions. Who are you? Where are you going to? Where are you coming from? The state does have a list of specific questions that they use, but they're not releasing those public because they don't want companies to prep, that kind of thing. Yeah. So it's just going to be a driver interview. The trooper did state that, we're not judging to see how proficient, like how well they speak. He says, even if they're speaking and it's if it's broken English and they're not that comfortable with it, they're going to give them credit for it, regardless of any other political factors. They're going to
You just need to be
do
able
their
to
best.
understand
Yeah,
and communicate.
Understand and communicate the best they can. And I mean, I can go back and tell you stories back in the day. Probably the funniest when I stopped a guy from Japan that spoke no English, and he was running around the truck with me chasing him, trying to show me something. I had no idea what was going on. It can get pretty interesting out there when you're dealing with somebody that does not speak English. And then after they do that driver interview, then they're going to pull out this a document that is going to have highway traffic signs. And we're going to be, with our notes of this podcast, we're kind of making something similar to help work and people can go through and use. And what the troopers are going to do, the enforcement officers here in Colorado, is they're going to select the signs. They're going to select 4 signs, and the driver is going to need to then identify, what each of those signs are in English. And in order to pass, they have to get 3 out of 4 correct. So they're not looking for a perfect score, but they are looking for them to be sufficient, I guess would be the correct word. So from there, after it talks about that, he kind of goes in and talks about the 4 ways that they're going to go through this. So with this next little part, I'm just going to read down what he presented just so we can kind of talk about it. And this would have been on his second slide, talking about the English language proficiency. It said, number 1, the enforcement officer is to explain to the driver one of the qualifications to drive a CMV that the inspector is evaluating is that the driver is able to understand the meaning of the U.S. highway signs. Point number 2, he said, the inspector will select from the attachment highway traffic signs, which we do not have a copy of that, so we're kind of making our own. Point number 3, it says the inspector will ask the driver to explain the meaning of 4 selected highway signs. And then point number 4 said the inspector will explain to the driver to be considered qualified understanding highway traffic signs in English pursuant to regulation. The inspector is evaluating whether the driver is able to explain satisfactorily the meaning of at least 3 of the 4 selected signs. So,
I would like to see 4 of 4.
I think that's pretty important.
Especially if the 4th one's a runaway truck ramp and you don't know what that is.
I'm so glad, Keith. I'm so glad you actually said that because I went through and I was preparing my notes, for this topic, and then I remembered, I was like, oh yeah, I've got the enforcement from CVSA, so I went over to Commercial Vehicle Safety Alliance and brought out that message that I had saved, and I printed up this huge memorandum that I stapled, and I gave you a copy of it too, and it's interesting because when you read through it, it's got some differences, I would say, from Colorado's enforcement guideline to what the feds actually say. Well, I think one of the biggest things, what's the biggest thing that you notice that's different in it?
Well, there's a lot of redacted stuff here that you have no idea what it says.
Yeah, it's really, they released this to the public so that the transportation companies are supposed to prepare and educate their drivers. And it comes out with solid black pages.
So is that so they can't coach them?
I think I think when we really get down to the brass tacks of it, it's so that they can't just, cherry pick and coach specific topics. And as an example of that, like I don't speak Spanish, right? I know enough Spanish for me. I can order a beer, I can order some food, and I could probably get myself in a fist fight. That's about all I really know for Spanish.
See?
But when I was a trooper, I could make it through a traffic stop. And that's because the state patrol went through and taught me the statements very well to get through a traffic stop. And I knew those statements, and I knew them crisp and clean. I would say them so well that the driver that I was pulled over would just take off and start rattling off and speaking to me, speaking about 100 miles an hour. And I had no idea what they were doing. So kind of in retrospect, looking back on that, I was coached to say very similar things, but I didn't know anything. So I think that that's really what they're trying to prevent and say, we're not just getting around this, we're making sure that people are actually qualified. And I think that's probably why that was redacted so heavily in there. But there's one more big change, Keith, that's in there, and that's going to be when you get down in and you're reading the language of it. It doesn't say anything about 3 out of 4 signs. It says everything the state patrol here in Colorado said they're to do, that they have to do the driver interview in English. Once the officer feels satisfied that the driver can speak sufficiently, they can continue the inspection in whatever language makes it more sufficient, more efficient to get through and comfortable for everybody. So if it's a bilingual driver, a bilingual officer, they can speak in whatever as soon as they make the determination that they're good. But when it comes to the traffic highway signs, it says you're also going to identify the traffic signs. And it doesn't say you have to pick out 4. It doesn't say you can get 4 out of 3. I think that is something that Colorado came up with on their own, which, going back to my reminder I said earlier, make sure your state jurisdictions that you understand what their expectations are. Some states are easier to talk to than others, though. So yeah, so it's a great. We'll go ahead and include this memo with our meeting notes to make sure that everybody has access to it. Yeah, it's gonna.
So this kind of goes to our TAFO of the week, which was a big deal not too long ago on the news. The guy in Florida.
Yep.
Goes from the right lane on an interstate, on a crossover. He just turns right there in front of everybody, and that little minivan went right underneath him.
It's so hard to watch.
Yeah, it's terrible.
It's just brutal. I mean, if you have any morale, if any decency at all, you just look at that and know what happened to that poor family. And I think one of the most disturbing things that I found about it is when I watched the driver's reaction. He just kind of looks over his shoulder. I mean, I didn't see a hint of remorse from this guy.
Or the passenger.
Yeah, it just really struck me as odd. But yeah, he made that.
I mean, the passenger in there, what I thought was odd is he didn't yell at him and say, no, what are you doing?
Yeah.
It didn't, he just sat there.
Yeah. And I mean, y'all are driving, you're professionals at this, on a busy interstate, turning across a lane, a U-turn, especially in one of those turnarounds, which are, the sign says, authorized emergency vehicles only, typically is what that sign says. That's not that's not where you're supposed to be putting a truck. It was a recipe for disaster.
But why not pull over to the side, wait till you're clear, and then go?
Keith, I'm going to say, why not drive to the dang next exit and take the exit and turn around?
And that's what scares me to death is like this guy, well, maybe he knew 3 of the 4, but he didn't know the 4th one is, whatever. I mean, it's
pretty brutal.
Unnecessary deaths.
Yeah. And dealing with that TAFO, it has been back in the news. So that crash did happen, a couple months back, but it has been back in the news early because of some of the hot topics that are coming out of that. First off, the discovery that California and a few other states, and unfortunately our state's one of them, is they've been issuing CDLs to immigrants that are undocumented. And we're not just talking about people from Mexico. The undocumented immigrants, they're from everywhere.
And
they're in all countries.
So are you referring to the no name given?
Well, almost. Right now, I'm just talking about the somebody that is here. They're not on an active work visa. They're here illegally, and they're giving them CDLs, no credentials, no whichever, and they're putting them to work. So. I think, they released a couple years back, they have to go through that new entry level driver training. So they go through that class, they present a certificate, and the state's giving them a CDL. Apparently, I don't know. And I know here we've discovered some of the CDL schools are not doing what they're supposed to do. They're not getting the right training. But either way, they don't have a work visa. They don't have the right to work here. They're getting a CDL from a state. So California was outed for that because they gave that particular driver a CDL, and then ultimately led to this.
So what happens to the company this guy was driving for?
Oh, well, they're potentially going to get audited. The particular company, I don't know the specifics on this particular company in the crash. I would say if they were out there in California, the audit's going to be conducted by the Federal Motor Carrier Safety Administration, and I would say that given our current administration, they're probably going to get lit up pretty tight.
Yeah, because wasn't there was another accident up here on I-70 in the mountains? Mm-hmm. Guy's drill pipe came off his flatbed. Killed the guy in a Ford pickup next to him. And of course, he didn't speak any English, probably didn't know any of the signs, obviously can't read a speed limit sign, but they went to what the company was hauling for. It's just an abandoned warehouse in Southern California.
Wow.
Nobody there.
Nobody there.
Nobody there.
Makes
Nothing.
no sense whatsoever.
And I don't know legally how they go find out who this was, but here's a family now that their dad's gone.
Exactly.
Totally unnecessary.
And we can, these crashes, I mean, they're just one after another. I've been saving them as they've been coming in. I've been saving them in a specific file. I'm like, oh, that's going to be a good topic. And it really all just boils down to everything. They went through and they started the CSA program to say, hey, we're going to promote safety. We're going to have more interaction. But ever since then, it's like they've just been undercutting themselves and cutting that program off to make it easier for people to violate some of these rules. Meanwhile, they're holding other people more accountable and making them holding their feet to the fire. But I think that's where it starts to, we start to bring in that politics. But
so you said Florida's suing California. What are they suing them for?
Florida, since that crash happened in the state of Florida, and that driver was issued that CDL, they've got no cooperation from the state of Florida, or I'm sorry, the state of California. So Florida, as a state, they have issued a federal lawsuit against California for illegally issuing CDL licenses to people that are not qualified. Because if you cannot speak English, you are not a qualified driver, and you should not be issued a CDL. And so they're coming after California for that. And then you also have the FMCSA has now stepped up, and they said that the state of California is not honoring their motor carrier requirements, because in the regulations, Part 350 dictates the requirements of what the state's program has to consist of. It talks about the variances that you can have from federal law and what variances you can't have. And CDL does not grant any variances, meaning the federal law, you can be stricter than the federal law, but you cannot be weaker. And California and some of these other states have taken a position to be weaker and go ahead and just issue CDLs to non. So the FMCSA is, they announced, I saw it just 2 days ago, they announced that they are pulling the federal funding. What I saw in national news, it was $40 million of federal funding has been pulled from California's motor carrier safety programs. So, yeah, California's response seems to be that, I think the exact thing that the media said last night was the response was, we don't need the money.
Really?
That's what was announced. So that's what we're dealing with out there. Just absolutely nuts. I mean,
I just don't understand.
Yeah. Well, just a whole lot of politics, I think, going on, and people are more worried about their color of their state than they are the safety of the actual citizens that are there, and that's the really frightening part.
That is.
Hey, well, good episode today, Keith. I had a lot of fun talking about this with you. So
yeah, this is obviously something that's not going away. And we're all out there on the highways, whether you're in a car, truck, Class 8 truck, whatever. We want everybody to be safe. Get to where you're going. Because no matter what, that's somebody's mom or dad or brother or sister or kid. Mm-hmm. I mean, we're all out there.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. So, yeah. Well, our next topic we're going to be talking about is we're going to be bringing up some hazardous material topics and how when you're transporting machinery, something with a combustible engine, that's actually looked at as a hazardous material. It's kind of a fun and interesting topic, but so we'll get into that on our next episode.
That'll be good.
Hope y'all come and tune back in. But for now, thank you. I appreciate all of you truck drivers. Thank you for everything that you do in keeping America moving forward. And stay safe out there on the roadway.
Thank you, guys. God bless.
God bless.